It's the Worst of the CBC for April 2nd, 2022, the show where we watch the CBC, so you don't have to. Special episode today. I know it's a weekend, but Wyatt's in town, so we watched the CBC's last night's The National together. Our national super broadcast, of the greatest minds at the CBC, combined IQ 4.
I have literally so much more respect for you after watching that. I thought whenever you make these episodes, it's like he throws on the CBC and he talks about that was a death march.
The amount of time Wyatt had to pause it, just like it's like, this is me. I'm so proud of you. So I mean, the first thing is like the number one story in CBC is like the Pope apologized to the indigenous people, kind of, for the residential schools. So it's 44, like the video is like 45 minutes of CBC The National, like without commercial, an hour. The first story was like 13 plus minutes, and it was just the same thing over and over. Like, he apologized, but some people liked it, some people thought they didn't like, same story over and over and over again. They did the story 4 different times. They did this same story after they did the first like 15-minute block, basically, so an entire third of it off the bat. Then they did it 3 more times. So it was just the same thing over and over and over again. That's what they did. And then
they still needed a bunch of dead air in the whole episode to get through it too.
Yeah, this is what I talk about. It's like the CBC has a broadcast, so they can. CBC News is an excuse not to do the news. So it was then after that, and then the next story was like COVID panic, which you guys know I hate talking about, but Wyatt loves like breaking down nonsense in numbers. So like, take it away.
The thing about it is that they kept setting up like, COVID-19 is surging and hospitalizations are surging, and then literally in the next 30 seconds they'll be like, but the hospital numbers haven't really gone up that much.
But they could.
But they could. And the UK saw numbers of COVID cases just shoot up, but they didn't really have anything to happen to the hospitals. But it could still happen. It's so bipolar. The coverage.
It's hilarious. And then they show like someone's like, it's like my family got COVID because the restrictions went down, and my husband and kids have it. It's like, are they dead? No, they're sneezing. Like
that one lady, I feel kind of bad for her and her family, because they said they removed the restrictions, then we got it, and she sounded like, I've become a sinner. My household has become
unclean.
A COVID household.
A COVID household. Yeah, people are going nuts. Yeah, but it was like the worst case of deaths, and millions of people are dead. Are they dying? No, but they could. The new modeling, and here's Dr. Theresa Tam to be like, everyone wear a mask and get a 17 vaccine every day. Get more vaccine. Yeah, it's pretty like. It's ridiculous.
They said like, every new variant is a wild card.
It's a wild card.
Like, what do you mean a wild card? Do you mean the 1 in a million chance that a variant could be somehow stronger than the previous one? That wild card?
It's like everyone's dying, but not really. But they could. I mean, this is the CBC COVID coverage. Then they go to Ukraine, where you rightfully pointed out that it's like leftist pacifist coverage of a war, where like they start off. And it's just like, it's basically like an animal shelter commercial. Like, you should have like Rosanna Arquette or someone be like, 50 million Ukrainians are left for adoption. And it's like black and like that type of stuff happening. Like the way we described it is the CBC is pro-Ukrainian propaganda that doesn't help Ukraine.
It's just covering them like these weak, pathetic people are being killed by the Russians, and they're trying to get their people out of Mariupol. And then, like, for maybe 5 seconds, the coverage was very good, and it's because the CBC shut up and let a Ukrainian soldier say, yes, we've taken back Irpin, and we're taking back other areas around Kiev, and we're actually securing it. We have very good logistics. That was the only good Ukrainian coverage. But they don't cover the war as a war. They cover it, again, like a dog commercial.
If you want to undermine Putin, that's what I always said. Like, this is why I always accuse, like, CBC, CNN, all of that is like has been Russian propaganda for the last 20 years. Because if you really want to undermine Putin, you illustrate how the Russians have spread themselves thin, have terrible logistics, and the fact that their generals keep getting fired, and Putin has sort of decreased the military capability of his country because he's afraid of strong military leadership, like throwing a coup against him. So he's put his friends in charge, and like not the best military minds. And this is really coming back to bite him in the ass because like there's not trust in the system throughout the military, and like that's what's undermining them, and that's the Ukrainians. But like none, it's just like Russia's amazing at murdering Ukrainians, and like we're just gonna
like you Russian soldiers literally walk around with their phones in their pockets, and the Ukrainian military can find them on Snapchat and bombard them with artillery based on Snapchat maps, because the Russian soldiers do not want to give their phones to their generals because they know they'll steal them and sell them on the black market. That's how bad the military is.
Yeah, so okay, that's that. And then like they went on and then they have to go and attack Hungary for like being neutral. And then they rightfully point out that like, yes, well, like 85% of Hungary's energy comes from Russia because it's right beside them. And it's like, well, what do you expect Hungary to do if we're not going to increase our domestic domestic oil production. Like if Canada and America aren't gonna like, it'd be one thing if we were like really unleashed our natural like our energy resources capabilities and said, listen, we can provide you the same energy Russia's providing to you, and you know what, we'll subsidize it kind of so you can get it at the same cost you're paying the Russians, because of course it's cheaper that way, but like we'll ship it to you at cost so you can actually boycott them. Then maybe you could get the Hungarians to boycott, but like there's no infrastructure. What are they going to do? Just turn off all the lights to like virtue signal to a bunch of leftists in America?
It's not even like Germany. Like the reason Viktor Orban and Hungary in general have not said much on Ukraine, like they're even against the Russian invasion, they just don't say too much, is because they've been screwed over by the European Union and the Russians, so they're dependent on Russia, which they don't like. But the European Union is not helping them because they don't produce energy. Yeah. So like, what are they going to do? Like, what are you supposed to do?
What are we like? We're supposed to just like not have energy? And like, yeah, they're doing the same thing the Germans are doing, but the Germans virtue signal loudly and like will like build a statue of Greta Thunberg, so it's fine.
Yeah.
And then the next thing is more indigenous people dancing and like the same story over and over again.
What made it so frustrating wasn't that it was 45 minutes of the CBC in which 35 minutes of it was the Pope apologizing to indigenous people. It was 4 segments spread out, and you're like, oh, what's the next story going to be? And it's like, we're going to talk to 7 more people from residential schools and
to say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm Ian Hanneman-Singh, and this is boring. Then the final story, we did 2 solid minutes on the carbon tax, which was, again, more government propaganda, where they kept covering the rebate, like, as if, like, well, people might not get the rebate. And, like, not factoring the fact that, like, they bring on Jabilblio to talk about the fact that, well, 8 out of 10 households are just making money off the carbon tax. This is great. Everyone's just making total bank off the carbon tax. Not covering the fact that, like, it's increasing inflation.
And this is where the CBC is incredibly insidious, is that if a conservative says something, they will take a garbage fact check and say, well, this person fact checked what they said, even if they're saying, like, partially false on, like, 1% of what they said.
Yeah.
Steve, I can't even say Stephen
the
guy's name anymore.
No, you have to get his name wrong in this program.
No. I mean, I can't. I was trying to get it right, and you've said it wrong so many times. I don't know what it is anymore.
Jabilblio.
If the CBC was actually trying to be objective, they would have brought up the hundreds of times that people have proven that the carbon tax does not make you money. There's no tax on the planet that makes you money.
Yeah, there's no legitimate opposition, and then like the only opposition they brought was some radical environmentalists who saying, well, we're not even talking about all the disastrous climate change that it's avoiding. And it's like, well, how does increasing the gas price of gas stop the thing?
The one guy who's a watchdog over the carbon tax
was the government budget officer.
The rebate doesn't cover the taxes that's on top of it. I'm like, oh man, that 5% GST it doesn't give you back on it. That's the real problem, not the fact that it makes food prices shoot up.
Again, like it's insidious by like covering. So, in honor of you being here, we just broke down the entire CBC The National because that was like every story they covered. And again, they don't do the news. There's a billion things they couldn't have covered. But
they even cut to black for the last 30 seconds because they had nothing.
In honor of you coming to Toronto, you get to do the Rosemary Barton scale for today.
Rosemary Barton scale? Oh, I'll try to be really nice about it. I want to keep the integrity of the system. I'd give it like an 8.5 out of 10 because at least they acknowledged for like maybe 10 seconds that the carbon tax is bad in certain people.
Yeah, that wasn't a 10 out of 10 because I've seen worse. I have PTSD. I've seen some shit, Wyatt. But okay, 8 out of 10 the Rosemary Barton scale. Thank you. Should we do another episode tomorrow?
Absolutely.
All right, we'll do another episode full breakdown of the National tomorrow. And if we die of a brain aneurysm, tell my wife, Rosemary Barton, that I cannot stand her. Make sure to send a lot of mean tweets her way. Good night.